Hi class, in this recording we're going to focus on breastfeeding, technically known as lactation. And when we think of lactation, it's going to be the process of making breast milk and ejecting breast milk from the mammary glands of an adult female. And this process of lactation can vary. Some women who aren't actively trying to breastfeed can lactate for as little as 1 week. Other women who are actively trying to breastfeed their child will find that they can breastfeed for years. And this process of lactation requires mechanical stimulation. So either you have mechanical stimulation from the child suckling on the nipple and areola, or you can have mechanical stimulation from a breast pump. As for for the case of just comparison, most women who have done both find that the breast pump will maybe works. It's not quite as comfortable as having a child do it, and it's not quite as effective at stimulating this lactation response. For my own wife in particular, for our first two children, she was still working full time while taking a breast pump to work, and she would take breaks at work to pump so she could bring her breast milk home for her child and then send it off with them to daycare. And it was difficult. It was hard. There's a lot of challenges for professional women while they trying to breastfeed and pump and also maintain their careers. For our third child, by that point, daycare costs would have been just too much for our family. So my wife made the decision to stay home and only work part-time on the weekends. And she has been able to breastfeed for a much longer period of time because she wasn't relying on that breast pump. Traditionally, women used to nurse for a median age till the child was a median age of 2.8 years. That age is much lower now. Now, most healthcare providers they try to get the woman to breastfeed for at least 6 months because of the benefits of that breast milk. 2.8 years as a median means that there were kids going 3.5 years and breastfeeding that long, which very rarely happens now. So during this process, we need to develop the mammary glands. And as we look at an adult female's mammary gland, before she is pregnant, it tends to be not very well developed. There's mostly just adipose tissue within the breast. However, during the pregnancy process, there's a big rush of estrogen. And that big rush of estrogen causes the mammary glands within the breast to grow larger. We also find that other hormones are at play here. We have human growth hormone, insulin, glucocorticoids, that all are going to help develop the breast and the breast tissue and the mammary glands within the breast. A really important one, though, that I bolted for you was prolactin. It promotes lactation. It's a great name of a hormone. Prolactin promotes lactation. And when we think of this lactation, it's really the making the milk, not ejecting the milk, but just making the milk. The progesterone that helps to maintain the endometrium of the uterus and minimize uterine contractions before the child is full term also serves a double duty. It is going to cause the acini of the mammary gland, so these big bulges at the end of the mammary glands, to grow even larger. And also it's going to stimulate the development of larger tubes from the mammary acini to the nipple of the breast. And we find that within a breast, there's going to be about 15 to 20 acini, and we'll have one acini per lobe of the breast. And they will then each have their own duct that all go to the nipple. So there's actually multiple small holes that allow for the breast milk to be ejected from the nipple. It's not one big hole like I used to think when I was a little kid. It's actually multiple tiny holes at the tip of the nipple. Now, as we look at breast milk itself, breast milk changes in composition very early on in the and after the birthing process. The breast milk is going to have more fat. And the reason for this is we need to have very high calorie breast milk. The size of the child's stomach at the point of birth is about the size of a marble or a tart cherry. So the stomach is unbelievably tiny. To put a number to it, we'll say about 5 milliliters of volume. Tops is the volume of the stomach. So the child can breastfeed for just a little tiny bit and fill up their stomach. And then about a half an hour later, their stomach is emptied, they're hungry again, and they need to breastfeed again. So when you see especially a first-time parent, and if they're walking around and they look like zombies, it's because all of a sudden they've gone from getting 8 hours of sleep a night to all of a sudden now they have to wake up every 30 to 40 minutes to breastfeed a kid. And it's a big adjustment. We call that very early breast milk colostrum, and it's super thick and has a very high concentration of fat. This shown here in this figure, this is not colostrum. This is breast milk that's been harvested 3 days after the birthing process, and it's still very high in fat, but colostrum is almost like Greek yogurt. I mean, it's just thick, and it has tons of fat, it has tons of protein, and has almost no water in it. As we look at the process of converting from colostrum to just regular breast milk, it's not like flicking a switch. It's not an on-off button. It's a gradual transition. So if I was to say day 1 over here, there'd be hardly anything and be super thick. And then as the mother lactates more and more, the child, and as the child breastfeeds more and more, the child's stomach expands, the child is capable of consuming more and more, and there's a feedback loop where the more the child consumes, the more the mother produces. So as the child continues to breastfeed more and more, the mother upregulates milk production so that she's making more and more and more breast milk. And as she produces more and more breast milk, that breast milk becomes diluted, and it has a higher water content, and also changes in overall composition. And it's worth emphasizing that breast milk contains a lot of immunoglobulin A. So we find that there's a lot of natural passive immunity for the child, where the child consumes mother's antibodies while the child is breastfeeding. And if you talk to many moms will swear by this, that once they stopped breastfeeding their child, if they breastfed their child for any period of time, there was about a month or 2 where the child's nose ran continually, where it seemed like the child was sick for a month or 2 straight with coughs and sneezes and just having a cold, because all of a sudden the child went from getting mom's antibodies to not getting mom's antibodies, and the child had to learn how to deal with all these new pathogens that the child never had to deal with before. Now, as we look at the hormone prolactin, it comes from our anterior pituitary gland. That's a review from last semester, and it promotes the synthesis, the production of milk. When somebody is not pregnant, prolactin is going to be inhibited by dopamine. However, into the pregnancy, the synthesis of prolactin begins about 5 weeks in, and by the time the woman has become full term in pregnancy, the concentrations of prolactin are 10 to 20 times higher than normal. Prolactin after birth is really going, until birth, prolactin doesn't have a very big effect on the mammary glands because there are steroids that are opposing milk synthesis, and the placenta is the organ which makes those steroids. So after the afterbirth has been removed, after the birthing process, there's no more placenta, there's no more placental steroids that down-regulate or desensitize the mammary glands to prolactin. So after birth, prolactin has a much more profound effect. We also find that just making milk requires more than prolactin. There's a whole variety of things that we need to have. We need to have more human growth hormone, we need to have more cortisol, we need more insulin, and we need more parathyroid hormone. And the woman's body uses all of those hormones to get all of these essential macronutrients, amino acids, fatty acids, and glucose into the breast milk, and to mobilize calcium ions, to get that calcium, that all-important mineral, into the breast milk as well. Now, after birth, we have the pregnancy process, and we find that prolactin levels skyrocket during pregnancy, and then they fall off pretty quickly. However, there's that physical stimulation of the nipple and areola by the child suckling. That physical stimulation causes a spike in prolactin. So the more the child breastfeeds, or the more the woman pumps, if that she doesn't have an opportunity to breastfeed her child, the more she's going to manually stimulate the breast, and the more manual stimulation, the more spikes in prolactin the woman's body will experience. And as these adult females are experiencing spikes in prolactin, that's going to upregulate milk synthesis. And this is how children can influence mom, where the more the child wants to eat, the more the child breastfeeds, and the more the child breastfeeds, the more prolactin is produced in the mother's body, and then in response to more prolactin, the mother will produce more milk. If a child stops feeding, that lack of prolactin can halt milk production in as quickly as 1 week. And as we look at women that are breastfeeding, we find that only 5 to 10% of women become pregnant while they're actively breastfeeding. And that's because the hormones associated with breastfeeding, both the prolactin and the oxytocin, are going to inhibit the release and the synthesis and release of gonadotropin releasing hormone. And if there's no GnRH being released, it's difficult for the anterior pituitary to release follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And that's going to reduce ovarian cycling. So by breastfeeding, we reduce a woman will downregulate the ovarian cycle. Now, is it possible to become pregnant while breastfeeding? Yes, I can say with confidence, I know a lot of women who became pregnant while they were breastfeeding. It's just not as likely. This breastfeeding process is a way of naturally spacing births. So usually, as the child gets larger, the child will become 1 or 2 years old, and by that age, the child is now eating solid foods and only supplementing with breast milk. So the mother is not breastfeeding as much, and the mother's ovarian cycle can start up again. So usually, we find that there's going to be, if the children are spaced close together, a woman can have children, 12, 13 months apart if she's really trying to. But it's very rare to have children closer than 13 months apart. I've only ever heard of this happening once, where there was a 9-month spacing between children, where a woman became pregnant 6 weeks postpartum, and then she gave birth prematurely. So her first child to the second child had a 9-month spacing in between them. Hoy vey. So getting that milk out also is a process. We've talked about producing the milk. We need prolactin and some other hormones to help us make the milk. But we need to get the milk out of the mammary acini. And as we look at these mammary acini, to get the milk out of them, we need to have stimulation of the areola. And this is referred to as the neuroendocrine reflex. So when the child manually stimulates the areola and the nipple, that's going to cause the posterior pituitary gland to release oxytocin. And oxytocin will cause contraction of smooth muscle cells. And it's smooth muscle cells all over the body are influenced by oxytocin. Not only the smooth muscle cells associated with the breast, those myoepithelial cells, but also the smooth muscle cells of the uterus and the smooth muscle cells of the digestive tract. So breastfeeding often is going to trigger bowel movements or make women need to go to the bathroom after they breastfeed. And this rush of oxytocin, in addition to helping to form maternal bonds between the mother and the child, also is going to cause the acini to contract, and as those mammary acini contract, they squeeze milk into the mammary ducts, and milk will typically start flowing 30 to 60 seconds after suckling begins. And I've talked to a lot of students. I used to have a lot of non-traditional students when I taught at a technical college who were parents, and I would say probably 20% of my students who were mothers would tell me, "Oh yeah, even just listening to my kid cry made me start to lactate." And I thought that's a great example of a Pavlovian reflex. Think of Pavlov's dogs. Hearing the crying of the child trained the woman to want to breastfeed. And in anticipation of breastfeeding and suckling, many women will start milk letdown just when they hear their child crying. As we look at the composition of breast milk over the course of pregnancy, breast milk typically will change. During the first 2 weeks, there's a rapid change in composition of the breast milk as we go from the colostrum to regular breast milk. But then there's also change from one time of day to the other, morning versus night, and there's a variation in composition over the course of feeding. What we find is that over a 20-minute feeding, that early on, for the first little bit of breast milk that comes out, there's a higher concentration of sugar and protein. But as the feeding session goes on, the composition of the breast milk shifts from sugars and proteins, which the kid needs a lot of because the kid is building their body up and needs a source of fuel. Towards the end of the breastfeeding, there's more fat. So if that child can sit down for a good 15 or 20-minute session, not only will the child get a lot of sugar and protein that they need right away for development, but they can also pack on some pounds and get some fat in the breast milk as well. As we look at cow's milk is not a good substitute for breast milk because bovine milk or cow's milk has less sugar in it, but more protein. And that alteration by upregulating protein and downregulating sugar within the child's diet is going to cause there to be more nitrogenous wastes in the body. And as we have more nitrogenous waste, that's going to cause more ammonia to be in the urine, and it will cause there to be more diaper rash because the child will have more ammonia down in their diaper, irritating their skin. You know what? What the heck? I'm going to share this story anyways. I remember when I was a first-time parent, I was totally sleep deprived. I was an absolute zombie, and I didn't have any breast milk. My wife was tapped out. She was totally done, and she needed some sleep because she was even more sleep deprived than I was. So I remember thinking to myself, oh, okay, cow's milk doesn't have enough sugar. So I grabbed some cow's milk from the fridge, heated it up in the microwave, and then I squirted a bunch of honey into it and added some sugar to it, and then gave it to my kiddo. And some of you are probably slapping your forehead right now because you don't want to give newborn children honey because the newborn child's digestive tract doesn't have a lot of acid in it and is not capable of processing any bacterial endospores which may be in the honey. Thankfully, I did not give my child botulism poisoning when I gave him cow's milk spiked with honey, although I will admit he really thought it was delicious. He drank that and went back to sleep, and I got to go back to sleep. But it's generally not recommended that you take cow's milk and supplement it with honey for a newborn child because you're putting the child at risk of developing botulism poisoning. As we look at the effect of breast milk on the child, breast milk contains a lot of solids, and those solids need to go into the child's body. And we find that the breast milk has a laxative effect on the child. Breastfeeding has a laxative effect. Not only does the oxytocin in the breast milk from the woman's body cause the child's smooth muscles of the digestive tract to contract, so a lot of kids will actually defecate after breastfeeding. This also helps to flush the digestive tract. The very first time a kid goes to the bathroom after they are born, after their first bowel movement, we call that stuff that comes out, we don't call it feces, we call it meconium. I usually pronounce it merconium because I learned how to say it wrong. And this first batch of feces that comes out, this meconium, is very green because it has an exceptionally high concentration of bile and bilirubin within it. If a child has jaundice or yellowed skin, one of the first things that's recommended for the child is to feed the child a lot, to have that child do a lot of breastfeeding. And as that child breastfeeds a lot, they will produce a lot of feces or meconium and flush that bilirubin out of their body by defecating it out. This also, as we look at this breast milk, it also is going to supply a lot of antibodies to the child and is going to colonize the intestinal tract of the child with good bacteria. This is an example of a diaper of a kid that's about a week old. So during the first bowel movement, it's black and tarry. After about 7 days, you go from black and tarry to cheese curds. And what happens is during this very early phase, we don't have enough bacteria in the child's digestive tract to fully digest everything, but the child is starting to produce a little bit of acid. And if any of you have ever made homemade cottage cheese, if you take a little bit of milk, or whole milk and mix it with a little bit of vinegar, you cause the casein within the milk to denature and coagulate, and that's exactly what is happening in this diaper. So we call it cottage cheese diaper that occurs, from, we'll say, week 1 to week 3 of the child's life. As we look at the mother that's breastfeeding, that nursing woman can produce about 1.5 liters of milk per day. Some women are higher, some women are lower. One woman I knew, she's actually my cousin, she just lactated a lot, and she would send about 3 liters of milk a day to a charitable organization that would then donate that milk to other women who are having trouble lactating. She was what you would call a super producer. Anyways, that's all we have for this recording on breastfeeding. If you have any questions or comment about lactation and breastfeeding, please feel free to post them in the class discussion board or to shoot me an email. And as always, happy studies.